So we're moving into Matthew chapter 16, and once again, the Sadducees and Pharisees want to test Jesus. Imagine that. And they want him to show a sign from heaven, and we get the same thing again. It says, the disciples came to, it says, they were asking him for a sign. Asked him to show them a sign from heaven, verse 1. And he answered and said to them, and he started telling them, you can see the things in the sky. You can read the sky, and you can tell the weather from the way the wind is blowing, or the sky is red in the evening, or the sky is red in the morning. And you can read those signs of the times. How come you can't see what's going on right in front of your eyes in this time? And so he's showing a little less patience with them. And of course, he's already called them evil, adulterous, vipers, that kind of thing, Verse 12, it says, then they understood that he did not say, because he started warning the disciples, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. They're teaching something, and they teach a lot of good stuff, the law and whatever, but there's something in their teaching that is deceptive, and there's a leaven, there's an evil that's creeping all throughout their teaching. And so he says, beware of the leaven. And they were thinking, there was just 4,000 fed. They're thinking leaven, bread, and all of a sudden they realize, oh, he's not talking about leaven and bread. He's talking about the teaching of the Pharisees, that there's something in the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees that we need to be aware of. So we get to verse 13 in chapter 16. When Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he began asking his disciples, saying, who do people say that the Son of Man is? So he's basically saying, who do people say that I am? And they answer, they say, some say John the Baptist. Well, we know Herod thought he was John the Baptist, risen from the dead. Others Elijah, but still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And so they all got these ideas of someone mighty from the past that's come back again. And so he asked in verse 15, but he said to them, who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter answered and said, thou art the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. This is an amazing declaration. I mean, it's just like, you're not any of those other things. You are unique in yourself. You're the one we've been waiting for. You're the center of all history. And wouldn't it be amazing? You're the guy there, and you get the revelation. Now, this is amazing. You're the Son of the living God. I mean, just that kind of statement is really out there. Jesus answered and said to him in verse 17, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, son of Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. In verse 18, and I also say to you that you are Peter, or you are Petros, which is a Greek word for a stone or a little rock. And upon this Petra, or a large rock, I will build my ecclesia, and the gates of Hades shall not overpower it. So it says, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not overpower it. So he's saying, you are Peter, which is the Greek word for Petros, a little rock, and upon this rock, Petra, big rock, I will build my ecclesia, my assembly. And so Jesus is setting something here, and he tells in verse 19, I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you shall bind on earth shall be bound, actually shall have been bound as actual tenses there in heaven. Whatever you shall loose on earth shall have been loosed in heaven. Well, here, there's a lot said here, and there's a lot of controversy, and this is the difference between maybe the Roman Catholic tradition and the Protestant tradition. The Roman Catholics would say Peter was given those keys. He's the one that's got them, and whoever comes down his line of ascendancy, he's the one that has the keys of the kingdom. He is the Christ's vicar on earth. He's Christ's representative on the earth. He's got those keys. But I think it probably is talking something bigger than that, because he says, you're Peter, and you're the little rock, but upon the big rock I'll build my church. And he probably is talking more about this truth of the revelation that you are the Christ. And whoever has that, whoever has that, we see in other parts of the scriptures, if we walk in the name of the Lord, if we come in his name, we have these authorities and these powers that are granted here. And he said, upon that rock, upon that large rock, that Petra, I will build my church. And the word there is ecclesia. It's talked about a lot today. Oftentimes the word ecclesia is used it's translated church in the Bibles, in most Bibles. the word could be assembly, and it's usually a legal assembly, and so God's legal assembly would be His ruling people. It can be that the use of the term is really dependent on who it's tied into. When it's God's assembly, it's God's kingdom people walking in His authority. But it can be used in other ways. In fact, in Acts 19, it's used as the unruly mob. It's called the ecclesia, what we would call church. There's an unruly mob, and they are called that there. But generally, the term is used in the Bible. It's used of God's assembly, God's ruling people, God's I think one group had it right. They called we're the assembly of God. That's basically what this is saying. The ecclesia of God, or the ecclesia, some people say, of God. And here it says, the gates of Hades shall not overpower it. And so the gates are those places where the rulers, the elders sat, and they're the leadership. And so what he's saying here is really, this is the church, the ecclesia, is a governmental organization. And the gates, the authority of Hades, will not be able to overpower it. And so this, prevent its advance, might be a better way to say it. And then it talks about the keys of the kingdom that God has given, that will open these doors and will loose things on earth and will bind things that need to be bound. So Jesus goes on, and after this, in verse 21, from that time Jesus Christ began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised up on the third day. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Wow. Peter just had a moment. I mean, he was just like, historically, he just told, flesh and blood did not reveal this revelation to you. He's walking in powerful revelation here, seems. But Peter took Jesus aside after Jesus said, I'm going to be killed and raised up on the third day, and he says, God forbid it, Lord. This shall never happen to you. Jesus just said it was going to happen to him. And Peter says, no, you know what? I really know better. I just had a revelation. But he turned and said to Peter, Jesus turns, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are not setting your mind on God's interests, but man's. So what he's saying here is, you've got maybe a human, fleshly compassion, fleshly mercy, but you're not really thinking in terms of the long-term plan here. And that long-term plan is there's got to be a sacrifice for sin. I'm gonna pay that price. And so don't stop this plan of God, or don't try to stop this plan of God, Peter, by your ungodly, earthly wisdom. And so Jesus, after just having boosted Peter with this wonderful claim of, you've gotten revelation from the Father, and even if you say, well, giving you the keys of the kingdom, now he calls him Satan, says, get behind me. You're going after man's desires, not God's desires. So, in the end of this chapter, in verse 24, it says, and Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone wishes to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life shall lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake shall find it. He says this right on the heels of, he just talked about he was going to give up his life. And so he becomes the best example, the primary example of giving up your life in order that you may bring forth greater life. And so Jesus is going to lay down his life, and it's going to bring forth life to the whole world. And he just says that not only for me, but whoever wishes to save his life is going to lose it. If you're just trying to cling to whatever, your own stuff, you're going to lose it. But if you'll give it up for his sake, he says you're going to find your life. And he ends with these three verses at the end of chapter 16. For what will it be profited if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and will then recompense every man according to his deeds. Truly I say to you, there are some of you who are standing here who shall not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So he talks about ultimately he's going to come and he's going to give to everyone according to their deeds. There's going to be a reward. And then he does this last sentence in Matthew chapter 16, and it's a transition sentence. He says, there's some of you who are standing here who won't taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. What's he talking about? Well, that's what we'll look at next.